So, what does it take to be successful in ethically non-monogamous relationships? The answer isn't really that sexy. It's the same stuff that it takes to be successful in any relationship structure, basically emotional intelligence. And what that looks like is doing the work to be skilled at having clarity as to what you yourself want, being able to actually communicate about that to others, allowing those two same concepts for your partner or partners, and then culminating in the climax of consent. I tried to make it sound sexy at least, but today we're going to talk about why we struggle with these basic skills and how you can start doing better, especially if you're wanting to explore non-monogamy. I'm the sex Mormon therapist with the emphasis on X. I'm a certified sex therapist here to help you get the information we never got at church, unlearn the shame we did, and reconnect with your pleasure. Make sure to subscribe if you're looking for real talk and tips and tricks to better sex and relationships. Today we're diving into a topic that brings together everything I love talking about: relationships, autonomy, and healing from the impact of high demand religion. If you're exploring ethical non-monogamy or even just curious about it, chances are you've maybe done some of the work unlearning the rigidity of purity culture, the black and white thinking of religious dogma, and the fear-based models of intimacy that many of us were raised with. But in case you haven't, just stay tuned for tons more of my content in the future. Here's the truth. E&M isn't about just having more sex or checking out of commitment. It's really the opposite of that. It's about showing up with more emotional maturity, more intention, more honesty, and that's where this conversation begins. In high demand religions, we were often taught that monogamy is not just the norm, it's divine law. Anything else was labeled selfish, dangerous, or sinful, and so many of us entered relationships without ever learning the basic tools of healthy communication, consent, or even sexual self-awareness. We were taught that marital sex was healthy sex, and that's pretty much where the instruction ended. And this is drastically untrue, since much harm can be done within the context of marital sex. A relationship structure in of itself does not make it healthy. It's how we put it into practice. We were handed blueprints that told us what our relationship should look like, not how to build what actually would work for us. So let's break down the emotional work that makes E&M possible, because to be real, any emotional path takes work. It takes self-awareness, it takes humility to be wrong and to be uncomfortable, and it requires a lot of consistency. It can also be incredibly healing. So this is about doing work that will benefit you. Let's first talk about communication. E&M requires deep, ongoing, and sometimes uncomfortable communication. And this isn't just a quick checking in. This is learning how to be really emotionally honest and to be able to say things like, hey, I'm nervous to bring up this topic of E&M, but I want to be really honest about the kinds of things I'm thinking and interested about with you. Another example might be, I'm noticing that I feel conflicted on how to respond. On the one hand, I want to be supportive about something that you're bringing to me that's hard. I can see that you're nervous about this, and I don't want to necessarily respond in a way where you feel shamed or not feel safe enough to talk to me about hard things. On the other hand, I'm really uncomfortable with this topic, and I'm not sure if I'm going to just accommodate this from a people pleaser or duty sex space that's not healthy for me and what I want. These are conversations, by the way, that I wish tons of people were having. Another example might include, even though I started this conversation, now that we're a few months in, I'm second guessing my own intentions and I'm coming up against some of my own insecurities. I'm not even sure I want to do this anymore. That's a hard thing to say. What about saying something like, on the one hand, I want to totally respect your doubts and boundaries and desires, while also being really truthful that I'm excited about this new direction we're going in, and I'm not sure I can authentically go back to where we were before. Another example might be, I noticed I felt some jealousy the other day. Can we unpack that together? These are the types of conversations I'm having, or at least trying to have with clients all the time who are navigating a lot of feelings, a lot of visceral reactions, and yet not always very skilled at knowing how to get these points across without falling into black and white narratives about you're just trying to control me, or you don't care about me, or you're just being selfish. We can black and white and catastrophize things when we're looking for quick resolvement of complex issues. So that's a lot of what we're doing in my clinical work, is learning differentiation skills where we can tolerate the discomfort of our differences of opinion while at the same time staying connected. And that is not a skill we typically learn at church. This kind of honesty is countercultural when you've been raised in systems that taught you to prioritize obedience over voicing your own opinions, that taught you to prioritize self-sacrifice instead of self-advocacy, that taught you how to prioritize conformity to a system instead of prioritizing your own preferences and your own safety. So it is challenging, and yet things that we can learn. The next concept I really want to dive into is consent. In many purity culture frameworks, consent was never really ours to claim. We were taught duty sex, we were taught marital obligation, we were taught ideas that desire is dangerous. Quite frankly, the concept of God altogether is not necessarily a consensual one. When we grow up from a young age learning that there is an all-powerful being who gets access to all of your thoughts and all of your actions, you're never really socialized to consider your own privacy and boundaries. It's not possible to have boundaries and privacy from God, which is represented by a male figure that has more power than you and oftentimes seen as a father figure. So just unpacking what that means for how we feel about ourselves and our sexuality is very complicated. E&M, which implies we're practicing our relationships from an ethical framework, demands ongoing, informed consent, not just for sex, but for all of it, for the emotional engagements, for the boundary settings, for the time and resources we're going to spend on these relationships, and all kinds of other agreements. Consent in E&M is also about honoring yourself, saying yes when you mean yes, and no when you mean no, which sounds simple, but consent gets tricky since sometimes a clear yes or no is not yet achieved within ourselves. Many of us are in the maybe categories of deciding something about our own sexuality or our sexual behavior. And consent is also a moving entity, meaning something I was into just 5 minutes ago, I may no longer be into in this particular moment. And there's no shame in this. And there should be no manipulation in this. It really requires the resilience to both disappoint others and to also handle disappointment yourself. Some examples of emotionally intelligent consent statements might look like, I want to keep checking in with you because what felt okay last week might feel differently today, and that's really completely valid. So I want to just see how you're feeling about things. Another comment might look like, I'm realizing I said yes to something I wasn't really fully comfortable with. Can we pause and talk about how we want to navigate this moving forward? Another statement might look like, I'm currently in a maybe state around this. Can we just slow down and pause so I can check in with myself and be more honest with you? And these conversations should be able to occur outside of the sexual container and within the sexual container. You can be in the middle of some type of sexual activity and be able to communicate a pause or a stop button, as well as continue green buttons of other sorts. Now let's get clear about clarity. One of the most transformative gifts of E&M is the chance to get really clear about your needs, about your values, about what you're afraid of and your insecurities, your desires and wants. Clarity doesn't mean you have everything figured out. Most of us, this is an ongoing journey. It just means you're willing to explore with honesty and self-responsibility. And let's name that clarity can feel scary when your religious upbringing taught you that your body, your wants, and your boundaries didn't really belong to you. This is what I reference an ownership model. We were fairly explicitly taught that our bodies and our desires belong to God, to our parents, to our church leaders, to our future monogamous spouses. So we didn't get a lot of ownership of ourselves. So I really want you to think about this path to clarity as a path to your liberation, regardless of what relational structure you end up feeling most preferred towards. Mantras we repeat to ourselves can really help us with clarity, since much of our own system can have conflicting ideas we're still trying to deconstruct. So here are a few examples you can try, or maybe give you some suggestions of things you can come up with on your own. My desires are not dangerous, they are data. So this mantra reframes desire from something shameful to something worth listening to with curiosity and self-trust, not just something to discard. We were always taught to discard things that made us uncomfortable or to see them as things that come from Satan. All right, another mantra that might be helpful is, I get to choose what's right for me, not what was chosen for me. This mantra affirms autonomy and begins to separate personal truth from inherited scripts. Another mantra idea is, pleasure is not sin. It's a part of being whole. This mantra gently challenges the shame that most of us dealt with in regards to feeling sexual pleasure, especially outside of marital constructs, which is where we all started exploring pleasure, was usually in early adolescence when we were not married. So this invites the integration of your body, your spirituality, and your sexuality. So in closing, whether you're practicing E&M or monogamy or anything in between, what matters most is that your relationship structure reflects your truth, not someone else's prescription. E&M isn't a quick fix, it's not a rebellion, it's a call to deeper relational integrity. It can be a really powerful container for reparenting the parts of you that were never allowed to take up space in love and sex. So wherever you are on the journey, deconstructing, experimenting, healing, holding space for yourself and someone else, that's really pivotal and profound work you're doing. So thank yourself for doing the emotional work, and thank your partner or partners for the work they're putting into this journey. We're all deserving of shame-free sexual spaces, pleasure, and peace. If you enjoy my content and want to go deeper, go sign up for my newsletter at natashahelfer.com. You'll get a free copy of my current download full of juicy information. And also make sure to leave your comments and questions for me, because I'd love to interact with you. Some questions I would love to hear from you about is maybe like, what's one moment in your E&M journey that taught you the most about your own emotional capacity or your own limitations? What kinds of emotional intelligence skills do you think are either lacking or present due to the things you were either taught or role modeled about in relationships made by your parents or your church leaders or whomever you saw be in relationship? How do you know when you're dealing with emotional dysregulation, and what do you do about it to self-soothe? How does it show up in your body? How do you deal with difficult emotions without going to easy tactics of either blaming a partner or stuffing it all away because it just isn't worth dealing with the trouble? In other words, bypassing your emotions. Remember to ring my bell and subscribe.